Welcome to the Compass Conversations podcast. We're a community of professional peers who love learning with and from each other. In other words, we choose collaboration over competition. Every conversation here is organic. Even the opening topic isn't settled until 5 minutes before we hit record. And the rest is riffing off of each other's brilliance. Thanks for hanging out with us in a new paradigm of learning, teaching, and expansion, where presence and non-competitive conversation create the space to learn without having to be schooled. Please visit compassconversations.com to discover more about this peer community and to include yourself as a sponsor. Welcome, everybody, to our next Compass Conversation. I'm actually really looking forward to this one. We just settled on our topic and our lead-in question about 47 seconds ago, so this is going to be great. Today's conversation is with Rupert Isaacson, Amelia Nolly, Jessica White Plume, Shay Stewart, Leslie Desmond, and myself, Carrie Lake. And as we do each time, just to assist all of us to this common space of sharing from our heart, I'll share our opening invocation that goes along with every one of the Compass Conversations. These conversations are shared from our sense of connection, camaraderie, and love. This community of peers is curious to learn from and with one another, living, learning, and leading by example. We're exploring together, acknowledging the interspecies family on this planet, while lovingly including ourselves in the family of life from the heart for the heart. So from there, we started talking about this pretty wonderful phenomenon, how many of us that teach in this paradigm in the horse world and truly in kind of, I would say, every walk of life, there are people who have been inviting humanity to a higher perspective, to a kinder perspective, to awareness of more connection and a different way of being. And at least those of us here in this room and in this community, we're starting to notice that for a long time, we were the only ones out there, or seemed like the only ones out there who could use these words, talk about these concepts. And so we were teaching them. Over however many of the previous years, more and more people are interested. Their hearts are calling them, or their minds are calling them, or their problems are pushing them into this new direction that connection and relationship seem to speak to innately. And whether it's a relationship between individuals with an environment, relationship between environments, between realms of study, between ways of thinking, between the etheric and spiritual and the physical, all of these things, relationship and connection, have come forward. So what we had talked about just before we hit record are a couple of questions like where are we noticing what might be called the 100th monkey effect, where all of a sudden a population just agrees that this is the way. It's no longer the outliers, front runners, weirdos, although that's always questionable whether we stop being weird, and instead it becomes a cohesive community that says, yes, this is how we operate now, and it generates a whole different functionality of an ecosystem even within human society. And then the next question might be, how does an ecosystem, how does a natural harmony produce new front runners? What's required? Like, what happens that would create a whole new level, a whole new edge of outliers and leaders and front runners? So That sounds like fun conversation to me. And really looking forward to what you guys have to share about that, or where that sparks your curiosity. What other questions does that bring forward? Please chime in at any time.
Well, I might, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, I'll wait.
It's all you, Leslie.
Well, maybe for a few minutes. I'm arriving at my destination, and there's dinner on the table, so I won't be able to join you for long. But I'll come back if you're still here when I'm done. What I would say, and the first thing that occurs to me, is that I'm not sure that front runners do come out of a harmonious ecosystem. I think front runners come out of a spot where there's unanswered questions and unmet needs for too long, and someone just breaks to the front, starts doing. I mean, I don't know that significant change and new trends come out of a thing where the status quo is a harmonious ecosystem. That's more of a static thing where people are in that. I think that the front runners bust out because there's something to bust out about, and a reason to bust forward to people who are looking for a new feeling, a new way of expressing themselves, and a way of feeling that they belong. I think if you want to use the word rebel instead of front runner, it could be synonymous depending on, I'm not now talking about anything that would be harsh or rebel in the sense of military, but in the sense of fomenting change and taking a stab at a solution to dissatisfaction. Because you want to have a relationship, you're talking about relationships are tough, man. You can have relationships. Who's got one that isn't tough? You have good relationships, I believe, because you work at that. It's a way of being, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe I don't have a handle on it the way the rest of you do.
Oh, I mean, maybe what I'm taking out of that is that people don't necessarily plan on becoming a front runner or becoming an outlier or those kinds of things. It's just that you can't think of doing something any differently than what you're doing, and, I don't know, like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, it's sort of like you're kind of continuously doing this thing and everybody's saying like, no, you got to like stay in your lane here, so it takes a different kind of thought pattern or personality, so to speak,
Yeah, like Galileo or Ben Franklin, or the people who can't think of doing anything any differently are the people who eventually, if they're really following something that's strong, if they're hearkening to something that's really a driving force inside them, they don't care about who approves it. They don't care about who's watching and who's applauding. They're just doing it because it feels right to do it. And eventually people figure it out that it's worth paying attention to, or yeah, maybe they had a point there, whether it's Madame Curie or Shakespeare. I mean, those were all front runners, weren't they?
And outliers for sure, right?
Yeah, but look at the amount of money that's been made talking about using, developing, depending on, incorporating the lessons that they, that they brought to the fore. I mean, things that were never thought of or done before. I mean, Galileo wasn't he almost lynched? I mean, I don't think he was the most popular guy.
No,
Well,
I
I
think
think
he
it was
was,
starting to talk
popular
about.
unless you were the Spanish Inquisition. I think the Spanish
yes.
Inquisition didn't like him very much and were pretty mean to him. But I think everyone else thought he was all right. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole
Yeah.
imprisonment and torture thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, even you take a guy like Van Gogh. It's just that I think it's very easy to seek comfort inside of change, and sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes change is just a bit raw, and sometimes the reasons for it are raw. I mean, we were talking about what is it that produces a front runner. I'm not sure that it's a harmonious, peaceful ecosystem until enough other people think that what they're outlying about and what they're front running about actually has a home in them as well. That's sort of what I'm. Hang on a minute. Sorry, I'm in a car. That's all I wanted to say, just as an idea. It doesn't mean it's right for anyone else. I just thought I'd mention it because when we talk about what does it take to make a front runner, what are the conditions that produce these people and produce the kinds of front runners that actually do make significant, for example, that get something in 3 weeks translated into how many languages because people are understanding it, or people are liking the way the sound of it makes them feel, sort of thing, So I don't have any more to offer than that. It was just an observation. Maybe it's not a correct one either. I don't know. What do you think?
I love what you're saying, Leslie. And to me, that you are pointing this out speaks a lot to what you already said. People, I think at least Western society, maybe more than just that, is set up to lull the masses into a perception of comfort. And I think for the people who do stand out, or I would say people who can't live any way different than their own constitution, who can't not do what they do, those people are, may never be comfortable. I can speak for myself. I have comfort all around me, and I would not say that I ever actually come to a place of just sit still and be comfortable. There's just always a movement happening in me, and I can't not go with that. I can't not be that. And maybe there's something that's common among the people who do cause discomfort and yet perhaps at the same time progress, or opening new spaces for the evolution of human thought or human connection, or even human and non-human. Humans can create things that open the way for other forms of life, that doesn't necessarily have to be destructive. Humans do have the capacity to create a harmonious space for all, which has kind of always been my orientation. But to look at the fact that it's not harmony that creates front runners or complacency or comfort or predictability per se. It's a recognition that there's a potential for something different, and somebody can't not do it.
Is what we perceive as disharmony in fact harmony?
I love it. Go.
Because I think it all depends on how narrow or broad one's perspective is. Obviously, when you go look at an ecosystem of any kind, usually what one sees first is a harmonious picture, a forest, a desert, a jungle, a mountain range. And then the closer you look at it, the more you realize that it's in flux and there's predators eating things, and all the stuff that nature has. And then you look even closer at that, and you see something like a pack of wild dogs pulling down a wildebeest and eating its guts out while it's alive, and think, oh, that's really non-harmonious. And then you see the wildebeest sort of looking at them.
I'm not going to go in this.
Should I go on? I don't know. Then you see the wildebeest sort of looking at the wild dogs with detachment and peace, and then you realize, oh, I guess those endorphins kicked in, that perhaps now that wildebeest is having a spiritual experience, and its DMT in its pineal gland has now exploded, and it's seeing God, and it's outside its body, and it's looking rather benignly down, saying, well, I'm already gone, you can have it if you want, I'm off to the next thing, I'm off to become Mozart, actually, or an earthworm, and or an alien, then okay, suddenly we're back to harmony, so we seem to bounce obviously between those poles depending on whether we're going towards pH 7 or pH 0, or wherever we are finding ourselves in that moment. But the ecosystem itself is a harmony, and but it's a harmony that has some passionate scales, and sometimes one finds oneself in the crescendo, and sometimes one finds oneself in the adagio. What's interesting about when you're talking about the people like Shakespeare and Galileo and so on is that those people never go away. I think the thing of the front runners is they remain that, and the good ideas are always recycled. It's interesting that we're using this piece of technology, this wireless technology, for example. That's Nikola Tesla. It seems, I don't know if this is true, but you hear people say 80% of all the technology we use today is basically thought of and figured out by him. And he died a pauper, mad, possibly being, stalked by government, but also sort of being kept from complete starvation. And he seems to have come up with the idea of free energy for all, and seems to have figured out what the Great Pyramid was for, that it might have been an energy generator, and he tried to do the same thing, and then JP Morgan, who was his financier, shut him down and gave his money to Edison, who was going to stay with what JP Morgan was all about, which was producing electricity with coal and all the fossil fuels with which we've gone, but it didn't mean that Nikola Tesla's ideas went away at all, or if you were the Dalai Lama, and the Cultural Revolution destroying Tibet, and then just disseminating Buddhism out to the rest of the world in a way that probably wouldn't have done otherwise. But
Right.
not nice at all to be the monk in the monastery as their Red Army is coming in and blowing it up. But yet you can see that there is a harmony to it all, and the Divine Comedy and all that. So yeah, front runners just seem to be produced by the ecosystem by necessity, because people have an idea and it doesn't occur to them. I think you're right, Amelia. I don't think anyone starts out going, oh, I want to be a front runner. I think they just have an idea and it seems like a good idea, so they do it for a bit, and then they do it some more, and they do it some, and then someone turns around and says, you're an outlier, you're a front runner. You're like, really? I thought I was just the bloke from down the street doing this thing. And it sort of goes from there. I think that, as you say, people do what they love, and then change comes from that.
Oh, that's a beautiful point. The image in my head, Rupert, as you're speaking about this vision of harmony, that it's something that I play with. Like the picture is that there could be a smaller disharmony swirling here that, based on your perception, might look horrible and ridiculous, but there's always a bigger harmony that's going to come and keep things in motion and scoop the smaller harmony back up in service, perhaps, to the whole. and a lot of the conversation depends on what perspective we're looking through, what lens are we looking through, and like you said, how narrow is the view that we're engaging with. Made me think of Shay and the energy systems that you teach about and work with just in the one ecosystem of a body, but it's never isolated, is it?
No, something Leslie said inspired a thought, and I'll see if it's coherent enough to formulate. She said, she talked about seeking comfort. And I think in our world we live in now, I talked about this the other day, how we orient to the speed of our brains instead of the wisdom in our body. We don't listen to our own body's wisdom. And our bodies are not meant to live in total comfort, yet we constantly seek that. We're meant to be stressed, or we're meant to do things stressed, come back down, stressed, come back down. But we don't like that as a whole. We want to keep the air conditioner at this certain temperature and the heater, and we want to make sure we're not hungry, and all these little things. And I don't know if this has anything to do with what we're talking about or not. It's just some thoughts that were coming through my head. But I think people who are who go outside of the box, maybe are people who do orient more to the wisdom of their body, and they don't thrive in comfort. Not that they seek discomfort, but they're okay with it. We have, the way our body is formed, the forces that form our body are the same forces that are found in nature. And like Rupert said, when you go out in nature, yeah, it seems peaceful, but if you look deep down, there's a lot of stuff going on that's might not be completely comfortable. I don't know where all I'm going with this. I'm just kind of babbling. But are you saying like your body is sort of, without thinking, it kind of creates this harmony, and the brain is kind of always like sort of next, or it's creating a certain amount of disharmony just to make the body keep maybe it's a function of motion, perpetual motion, so to speak. Well, I think we seek comfort because we're not living in harmony with ourselves. So we have an intelligence in our own system of us that goes beyond our cognition. And we've developed a world where we're disconnected to that. A part of our primal perceptions have become dormant. Mm-hmm. There's a whole part of our brain that we don't even use, that we could, and it takes a lot of work to learn how to get back in touch with our primal perceptions, so to speak.
Yeah. That really is moving along the lines of what was came up for me too, when Leslie brought up front runners or far runners. And if we talk about our first lens being the horse world, for example, I would like to believe that we're coming to a place where we realize the front runners are not human, really, at all. And in the horse world, in our circles anyway, a lot of people are saying, basically the big shift has been that we're learning how to be more like horses, and we're learning how to communicate more like horses. And it's getting us a lot of different places with the horses and a lot of different places within ourselves. And so when I do more individualized quote unquote horse therapy stuff, I literally do just say a prayer and ask the horses, and they do the work. And I don't mean that metaphorically, like they do the work. And in our, in our indigenous cultures, we rely on the buffalo and the horses and the other nations and the medicines, and not metaphorically, like they are the front runners, they are the leaders, they are so all the shifts that we see happening, more focused on relationship, more focused on not always in harmony, but at least more in line with nature. So for example, I did some of the workplace wellness work for a while there, way back at a medical school. And there was, the big companies are shifting more towards like flexible time and a whole lot more maternity leave and paternity leave, green energy. All of that shift is more towards nature and natural rhythms and kind of that type of divine wisdom that's in all of those things are coming more to the front. And our big brains, and humans are included in that, but like Shay is saying, it's more like we could be more natural humans. And then there's a movement in that direction. There's so many more. I was just amazed at how we did a horse massage clinic and equine body work that would have been way on the fringe before. And now it's like, woof, everybody's right there, because exactly what you're saying, we're becoming aware of the primal nature that we are supposed to have. And so I feel like those, basically nature is coming more to the front runner. Other non-human things are hopefully taking that position. I'd like to think so.
Which then does prompt humanity to recognize that aspect, that nature within themselves, right? And re-include humanity in the family of nature, which has been so estranged and overly dominated. There's a confluence that I'm watching as well of, the idea of neural systems, neural networks. At one point, humanity would have called that, just strictly human, to the degree like just a few decades ago, suggesting that animals don't feel, that, any sound they make is a simple mechanical function of air squeezed out of a body or something like that. And it's now so abundantly clear, the commonalities of nervous systems among mammals, but then also looking at what can be called a different kind of a neural network in the forest and among trees and mycelia, and then of course the way humans are creating machine learning and all of that. I love seeing what's common in all of these conversations, right? Where are we all talking and pointing in the same direction, talking like where are the fractals in all of these things, and what are we trying to get our attention for? Like, what's really important here? What's really important for us to see if we can start to notice all of these changes?
I was just trying to remember which saint it was who said that animals have no souls, and I was just trying to look it up on Dr. Google, and Google gave me something completely different. But it seems relevant. It's a Hindu thing. what came up said, what religion believes that animals don't have souls? I said, oh, okay, I'll click that. So I clicked it. It says Hindu scriptures teach that an eternal soul possesses the forms of all sentient beings. So animals don't have souls, rather, souls have animals, so to speak.
That's amazing. There have been communication sessions that I've done over many years where, say, for example, somebody calls because their house cat, who has never tried leaving the house before, one day, all of a sudden, they just open the front door to leave, and their cat just darts out, beelines out with a purpose, runs straight out into the street in exactly the time that a car was driving by, and boom, they were hit by a car. And of course, the people are distraught and they want to know why this makes no sense at all. And in connecting with the animals themselves, like that individual cat would share an awareness far beyond the purpose and life stream of that one individual cat. They would show me that in their view, it looked like a vortex. And they couldn't not go. They were heading in that direction because that was the only direction to go. It wasn't about the physical world. It was about moving. I guess the words that I would use to translate what does not come in language, but they would be called back to the collective because the energy that had been distilled into that one individual will now better serve if it's re-swirled and reorganized. And in that way, like many different connections and communications, as well as my own personal inquiries, have pointed in that direction. And perhaps a common terminology for that goes all the way to this idea of we are all one, right? We're all part of the same source, but there's different ways to look at it and cognitize it, and see how these things come together for us to dink around, in physical form on the planet with each other, different species.
So
I was,
go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was debating on whether I should share this personal thing, but I think, Carrie, you've kind of abundantly pushed it so that now I have to share. Because we want us to be real and from the heart, right? And this is really big on my heart right now. So this is the second time that this has happened. And I'm really trying to overcome that smaller human part. Anyway, okay, so this is what happened. I had my first real, well, my more recent real heart horse, many years. I'm up in North Dakota now, but he came from my dad's place in South Dakota. So I joke that he was the other white plume. He was here with many years. He was like my racehorse. We would, do all these races and run around and be fast and furious, all these stuff. And he was awesome. He was powerful. He was all the things. Adventures, And then there came a point where I started doing more of the lessons with kids and all that stuff. And our kids were growing up, and I bought a few more older horses, focusing more on slower, quiet riding with kids, with beginners, not so much on the, adrenaline racing world so much. So eventually there became a point where I said, I'm going to go ahead and put him out to, we have a lot of big range units out here, like on the reservation, there's like big range units of land, it's like 5,000, 7,000 acres or whatever. And you can, so I was going to put him out on one of these range units and just let him, live out the rest of his days, basically, instead of being in a pen, if, I was going to basically let him retire in this big, beautiful, luxurious range unit. And it was a hard decision, but I felt like it was time and it was good. And, we had a new shift in time and all of that as far as our lives. So I made this thought just internally in my mind, and 2 days later he died. So I was like, oh wow, you know, and of course we're so close, and I have never cried so hard for anybody or anything. But I had to come to terms with it in the same kind of way that you were just talking about the cat. Same thing. Like, obviously death is not what we, you know, humanize it. Obviously their spirits just here for a time. And so I chose to see it as a indication of our connection, of how very directly our connection was, you know. So it was a whole process. That was 5 years ago. And now it's just happened again. Like, just now. We have this old grandpa horse. He was with us for 10 years, brought up all the kids. He was suffering in the winter because the winters are so harsh here. So I just got the email returned from a sanctuary place that's further south where he could go and live and rest of his days. I would be happy. I would gladly feed him for the rest of his days. But North Dakota is so harsh. It's just so harsh for old grandpas. So I never would sell him, but I found this sanctuary place, warm, barn, all the things. Sent them the whole story, sent them some pictures, and they said, we'd love to have him. We would treasure him. We would pamper him. I was like, sad, but happy. This was 2 days ago. We come back and now he's gone. He's just gone. He's left. So I really needed to hear your story on that, Carrie. And I am still in a weird place, but I really need to hear that in a loving, good, supportive way.
What a dignified way to go, you know, to choose like that. Can I share a personal story from just a few weeks ago? This is going to sound completely nuts, but everyone here is nuts, so we're in good company.
Bring it on. Yeah.
All right, so this is nuts. I was in Namibia, in Africa, Southwest Africa, and the last time I had been there, which was 13 years ago, I had been there, and I have a family connection to the place. I had been there to take my son Rowan, who was still very autistic at that point, for healing, and it was the second healing, sorry, of several that I had been instructed to do by the healer in Mongolia. So it was the first year after Mongolia, and I knew the healers pretty well in the Kalahari personally, and there was a particular healer, a guy called Besa, who I was very close to, and Rowan's middle name is Besa. And Besa was a very enigmatic man. He was basically autistic. He would never look you in the eye. He would speak completely in riddles. He would flap. He would dance. But he could pull cancers out of people's bodies. I've seen him do extraordinary things. And he is the only person who I have, who he basically helped me to understand what shape-shifting is in the shamanic way. And he showed me one day. He said, I use leopard. Different people use different things. I tend to use leopard as a vehicle when I want to go a long distance and heal. And he went into trance with his family. I was there and then fell down in trance, and his family stayed with his body, and I saw a leopard get up out of the bush 100 yards away and go. And you don't see leopard that often. And anyway, Besa died not so long ago, and I knew when we were out there doing that healing with Rowan that would probably be the last time I saw him, because Besa lives in Botswana and I'm banned from Botswana. I can't go in anymore because of the human rights work I did there. So when he did the healing on Rowan, we had to get him to Namibia and get him a passport, which was almost impossible because he lived under a tree, and you can imagine the logistics, right? And anyway, but we managed to, and it was very beautiful, this healing. And he died a few years back. He also said to me, Rupert, you're leopard, for various reasons. And he also always called me Besa. He always called me little Besa. And he taught me a lot of things. We're in, a few weeks ago, a game reserve in Africa, and we're on our way to the Bushmen with my two younger kids who've never been to Africa before, and my wife Ileana. We're going to go for healing. But not only is Besa dead, but well, Unta, who was the other healer I was very close, he's dead too. So we don't know who we're going to find. We don't know what we're going to find. We don't know who's there in the villages doing it. And because you can't just sort of email people, you know, and you have to show up and see. We're in the game reserve, and it's the last day in the game reserve, and the kids say, "We really want to see a leopard." And so Ileana, my wife, just jokingly says to me, "Ask your old friend Besa, why don't you?" So I said, "All right." And I said a little prayer, and boom, and I said, "Go over there, drive there." We drive there. It's all of 5 minutes. The leopard is sitting 1 meter from us. It's him. It's unmistakably, recognizably Besa looking at me. And my parents-in-law, who've never been to Africa before, are in a vehicle behind us. And the leopard gets up and walks towards their car. In the middle, between our car and their car, he stops and he drinks from a puddle, because there was a late rainy season, an unusually late rainy season this year. And as he was drinking from the puddle, I saw Besa leave the leopard, and the leopard was just a leopard again. And then went to, and my mother-in-law wanted for her birthday, which was last week, a picture of that, of the leopard. And I didn't really share that story because, you know, there's some stories you share and some stories you don't. And the picture, which was taken actually, I think, by my daughter, is of the leopard drinking. And she's basically got him at the exact moment that Besa's leaving his body. Completely nuts, but there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I think there are more of us than know how to speak of it that have a sense that that reality is reality as well. But we're not given the vocabulary, we're not given the thought
It's
patterns.
nice to be able to also just say, hey, this happened, and be in company where, you know, you don't feel you have to defend it or explain why it doesn't suck, or, you know what I mean? It's just to be able to say, here it is.
Yeah.
And to know that the people, and probably people listening to this podcast, will go, yeah, that's happened to me. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I do think that community of us is growing now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I like the thought also that, you know, it's not just sort of one animal that you, or one interspecies that you might connect with or become part of, or, you know, be from, so to speak, right?
Sure.
And it changes over time as we.
Sure, absolutely. Leopard was not the only animal I was given. I was also given porcupine and donkey. Yeah, I'm a donkey because I'm a good little worker, apparently. So yeah. It's not always glamorous like a leopard, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems like it all kind of, the conversation is shifting in so many ways, but it seems to always come back to the similar things, you know, this sort of primal, you know, nature. Being in touch with that, like if, you know, we trust that these things are not out of, you know, a normal, that they're spiritual or however you want to look at it, but it doesn't have to be unacceptable, you know. So yeah. And that exploration too, you know, it's maybe
also if it wasn't like that, how could we possibly have survived as mid-level predators, dodging everything else that's bigger and stronger and meaner than us, if we didn't cultivate this awareness of all the species around us? You know, because we sit really in the center, I think, as humans. because we're omnivores, because we're hairless, because we're basically undefended. We're not armored. We're not very strong. We're slow. But we've got this big brain, and we're good at strategizing together. But if we didn't have this meta awareness and this ability, this empathy, to be able to put ourselves into animal mind, tree mind, insect mind, other beings' mind, how could we have gotten past first base? And we're not the only species that does it, but we obviously have a consciousness and we can communicate with each other about it.
But we're still dodging, right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, each other mostly, and other whatever their being is that day, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and
or
having
ourselves,
yeah, or yourself, yeah, and sometimes soften and sometimes be more strong, or you know, try to navigate.
That's the point that brings me right back to the heart, right? And because it brings me to this question of, okay, if that's our capacity to function and to empathically share awareness and beingness and mind, where's the movement that would take us to do that, right? Is there an inception point of movement that would finally like say, oh, I can do this, so let's do it now? Or is that part of the greater harmony that, of course, humanity would at some point, you know, go sideways, and then some part of the greater harmony prompts us to come back to this kind of awareness? And to me, there is the only words I know to point to that would be love and heart. And to me, what that's pointing to is what is common among all of life. Like, what do we share with all these other species that eventually, and even off planet, what is it that would cause any of us to pop out of comfort and wonder, what would it be like if I were part of a species or a race that did not live in a physical form on this body, or a leopard or a camel, or a unicellular organism? Like, what's the wave that we catch that is common among us, that lets us experience the diversity between us and really appreciate the diversity?
I think being able to communicate about experiences and sharing stories. I've had a lot of really interesting experiences with the work I do, and I got to a point where I started sharing stuff that I was experiencing, and the stuff that I was sharing became validated by the horse owner, or there's so much about life we don't know, and staying open and curious and heart-centered, I think, is crucial to be able to understand, or even begin to understand. I've had some pretty wild rides, some pretty crazy things that, on the way to appointments, and stuff going through my brain that ends up being relevant to, what's happened when I got there, or, just all kinds of stuff. Or I can relate to
Jess's story about losing her horse, mine was pretty similar. And I honestly feel like he left his body that time, that day, intentionally. I think it was all part of his plan. And I'm at peace with that. So anyway, I don't know what else to say. I just kind of stated.
I'm curious, like, what makes that sort of that sadness, you know, like you definitely miss this physical form, right? And so what is it that allows you to sort of move on, or not feel connected again, right? Because it must be an unconnectedness that you're suddenly feeling that gives you this like base, you know, heart ache, right?
Yes, it's like a pain in the heart.
Right.
So we are supposed to grieve. I mean, grieving is a facet of love, and I think what we're talking about here is love. And to grieve is to honor, right? I think what we're saying is, I'm expressing my love for you now in a way that's appropriate to this situation, because you're not here to dance with joyfully, or you're not here for me to cuddle, or you're not here for me to worry about. And I think, you know, so when you ask Emilia, you know, what allows you to move on, or it's the grieving, it's the expression. But I think people often mistake what grieving is. They think grieving is getting mired in tragedy or the sense of one's own loss. But I think grieving in its best form is really just acknowledging the love and wanting to stay in it for a while. You know, and I think that's entirely right. I mean, elephants do it when one of them dies in the band too. They get together, they have rituals, they cover them with grass, they, you know, and they grieve. And we've seen lots of animals do it, and of course we do it in our way. We're rather extreme, so we tend to do things, you know, in our monkeyish ways. But nonetheless, I do think that it's a really honorable expression of love to grieve. And it's something to be encouraged and shared. I think if you're lucky enough to be able to grieve with those you love, that's a beautiful form of grief. If you're isolated and alone, perhaps what some people might be going through right now in Ukraine, you know, a bomb drops, the family's dead. Oh, but that's a very unnatural situation. That's not how we're supposed to live. You know, it's not a hunter-gatherer type situation at all, because there wouldn't be war if it was a hunter-gatherer situation, really. You know, so, but grief, yeah, grief is love, love is grief.
There's so much about, because we're humans and we have this ability to shift our perception and shift the lens we look through, there's opportunities to to change how we relate. You know, like if death is related to as a loss, then we can judge it as bad or good, you know. But if death is life, because it's going to happen, right? Death is life. It's a birthing into what's next. We can have a relationship with not only the event, but also the welcoming of what we might call discomfort. But even if we drop the word discomfort, it's the experience. It's just how it feels when this transition has happened, you know. And if there's a fear of the experience, then that sets a human up for all sorts of, you know, wild feelings, perhaps. But it makes me think of a friend of mine who loves to ask this question of, why aren't we scared to death of where we were before we were born? You know, humanity is scared to death of what happens when you die, but what about before you were born, and it's just sort of
Oh shit, there's
a-
another thing to be scared about. Oh no, I was doing so well, Carrie, now you bring that up.
Sorry, not sorry, I don't know.
Oh,
But-
all right, fine.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Well, true to form, we always get into good stuff about 5 minutes before we're wrapping up a conversation. So are there any wrapping thoughts, any sparking curiosities, any last words you'd like to share? Jess, my heart is with you on the journey of your friend making a new start.
Yeah. No, thank you. I just appreciate all of your thoughts on it, because I do, and the reminder about, because I really don't fear my death. And so this happening, it's just such a stark, real thing right now. And I am curious, and I am grieving, but I'm also like, wow, this is really phenomenal. But so anyway, just to be able to talk about it with you all, I really appreciate you as a group of friends and explorers and thinkers, and mostly as friends. So thank you for that.
I guess I would say that I don't know, grief also kind of comes and goes, and I could almost shed a tear now for something that happened, like my sister died like in 2006, and she comes and goes all the time in my world. She's there a lot. I feel her presence, and but it's kind of nice to think about it as love, like that I really can stick. So thanks. I appreciate you guys.
His name was Kwana. We really, in our culture, like to recognize names. So his name
What
was
does Kwana mean?
Well, it was actually there's some old war chief or something that I later
Kwana,
looked up, and I
Kwana
just
Parker.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I really drive with all of what Kwana Parker did, but I like the name. And so before it was Jet or something like that on his papers, on his registration papers, but I always really liked Kwana, and then it became Kwana Bear, because we get funny mail around here that just says like Marty Bear, because they don't do his last name correctly. Anyway, so he became Kwana Bear, and literally, if I was busy with a client and some random children show up, I would just say, go pet Kwana, because they could climb under him, they could poke his eyeball, and he would just, be patient and take care of them. And literally people who had no trust could spend all day with him and be forever safe. So it's just, did a lot of work. And so now he's resting. Yeah.
Or taking care of a lot of other ones.
Well, maybe
I'd still be busy.
maybe hopefully it gets a little big. But anyway, we all say thank you, Kwana. Yes.
Yeah. I think we all do. Yeah. Thanks for letting us share in that little bit of him and share his awesomeness, his awesomeness. Yeah.
Some hoarseness, yes. Just gonna see if I could share. Are we able to share screens at all, or no? Probably not, huh?
Let me make sure. Yep, you should be able to do it now.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I have my organization enough together to have pictures, but I'll see if I can find a picture.
What's your watch that video in here?
Go ahead, son. Yes. I don't know if I can find pictures here, but anyways, anybody else have any thoughts while I look? Go ahead.
My British humor immediately kicks in and imagines you pressing the wrong button and a picture of like a grand piano coming up, or a
Oh yeah, that would be great. Oh, here's one. Oh, it's a perfect one. This is a moment where we did decided to try to bring back some archery, mounted archery. I have one of my dreams or goals or whatever is to bring back some mounted archery. So we had a little, okay, how do I do share screen?
If you're at the bottom, there's a green button that you click, share screen, and it'll bring up another screen. Choose the video.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bottom, before you click go, the bottom left of that window, there's a button for optimize for video. And then click share.
Okay, well, let's see.
Yep, you're doing it.
Oh, there he is. Look at him.
Oh, but we don't see it yet. We just see a blank black.
It's very
there's
dark
your
where he
desk.
is. Yeah.
There's your desktop, or no, this is your pictures folder. So
Okay.
double click on the one you want us to see.
I did, and I can see it, but evidently you can't. Oh, darn it.
No.
Darn it.
So go ahead and stop share.
Yeah. See if I could do it another way. Yeah, that's okay.
But that was a nice window on life on the high prairie. For those listeners who didn't see what we just saw, we saw a whole bunch of pictures of like really, really happy kids sitting on lovely looking ponies and some teepees and some beautiful landscapes, and we all kind of went, "Oh, that was really cool." And then
that's life around here.
So thank you for sharing that. That was really nice.
Yeah.
That's quite inspirational.
Yeah. We probably can't do that. Nope, that don't work either. Apparently he don't want to share his picture today, but anyway, I've taken enough time. And yep, thank you all. I needed that today, and we'll send blessings right back at you. Yes.
Likewise,
thank you, Jess. Thank you, Jess. And thank you, Shay, for sharing your thoughts too, that your ramblings are always relevant.
We love your thoughts. Absolutely. We all need to be in our bodies more. Yeah.
That sounds like another podcast, Relevant Ramblings.
Oh, totally.
Ramblings of relevance. Yeah, you should do it.
I love that. Oh, that would be really fun. Oh. And just to sprinkle another thank you back to Leslie for kicking off the conversation in a really beautiful way, honestly. Because I think, I feel it in my heart, she's spot on that it doesn't take a harmony to create change, but perhaps change is always happening within that harmony, and we get it. It makes itself visible through what we would call outliers, or people who are different, or people who just can't not do what is in their own hearts, whether it is common or not. I don't know. To me, just fanning the flames of everybody to explore your own unique expression. And that's, I think, what makes our world so beautiful and colorful. So thank you guys so very much. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.